Welcome to math. Today we're going to use equilateral triangles. We call them equilateral triangles because the three sides are equal. We're going to pretend that our triangles are a piece of cheese. And I want you to divide the cheese into two equal shares. Now this is going to be tricky because you don't have page 232. I'm going to post it to Seesaw in activities. If you're not able to print it out, I have another thought that if you, asking your parents' permission first, if you have the triangles on your screen and you put a piece of scrap paper up to your screen, if you lightly trace the triangle, then you would be able to cut it out of your scrap piece of paper. Again, please make sure you ask your parents because I would not want you to ruin your device because you traced something on the screen. But I think you would be able to lightly be able to do that. I'm not sure though. Please ask your parents for permission. Once you are able to have an equilateral triangle, whether or not you draw your own, which is going to be very tricky because all three sides have to be equal, or whether or not your parents help you trace it or print it out or whatever, you're going to cut it out and you're going to have an equilateral triangle that looks something like this. Okay? Now we call this a mathematical model, and that's something that mathematicians use to represent or show something in the real world that they don't actually have in front of them. So if you remember at the very beginning of this lesson, I told you we were going to pretend that these were a piece of cheese. Okay, so we don't have a triangle piece of cheese in front of us, so we're going to use this mathematical model and pretend that this is a piece of cheese. So, I want you to divide this piece of cheese into two equal shares. So I'm going to give you a few minutes to try that. Then I'm going to ask you, how did you show your shares? So how did you divide your piece of cheese into two equal shares? I want you to think about it. Tell me with your words, and in a minute I'm going to show you and then tell you with my words. So you could either draw a line down the middle, you could cut the piece of cheese in half, or you could fold the piece of cheese. So I'm going to fold the piece of cheese, and then I'll draw a line to show you. So you want to make sure that it's all perfect on both sides. You want it to be equal on both sides, because when you have two equal shares, they're equal on both sides. So I folded it in half, and now I'm going to mark it so you can see it. Okay, so there it is. There's my line. I drew the line, I folded it. I could cut it if I want to, but I don't really want to cut mine. You can do either of those. Okay, so I'm going to ask you, what is the name of one share? We had this in the lesson 2 days ago. If you answered half, 1/2, or 1 out of 2 parts, you are correct. So one share is called a half, or 1/2, or 1 out of 2 parts. How do you know you have equal shares or halves? How do we know this is equal? What tells us this is equal? So if you're thinking it's equal because when I fold the paper in half, they meet each other and there's nothing extra hanging around on the edges, that is correct. Okay, they're the same on both sides. This is the same as this side. Okay, perfect. All right, now let's use our mathematical model, which is this right here, and let's answer the questions on page 165. So in your math journal, I want you to go to page 165, and I'll do it with you today because you don't necessarily have the manipulatives to work with. All right, so the first question says, show how you shared your piece of cheese into 2 equal shares. So how can you take this piece of cheese and show 2 equal shares? So we just did this. What did we do? We said we could cut it, we could draw a line, or we could fold it. Well, on your book, it's going to be hard to do 2 out of those 3. So how about this time we just draw a line, right? So you're going to draw a line showing the 2 equal shares. So you're going to draw a line right down the center on your book, right down the center. Okay? Perfect. Number 2, is this piece of cheese divided into 2 equal shares? So this piece right here, they have this line right here is where they want you to fold it. If you were to fold that on that line, is that divided into 2 equal shares? So I want you to try it with your mathematical model, your pretend piece of cheese. All right, let me show you in case you can't do it yourself. So I'm going to take, so here's the triangle. They're taking this tip and you're putting it down to the bottom. So if I do that, and I fold it in half, is this 2 equal shares? Is this top part, let me do it with a, let me put the line on there so you can see it. Is this top part the same, is equal to this bottom part? And it wants you to explain how you know. So first of all, you have to write yes or no up here. Is the piece of cheese divided into 2 equal shares? So is this divided into 2 equal shares, yes or no? Explain how you know. So I'm hoping that you're saying no, because if they were equal, these little wings right here wouldn't be there, right? Because the top doesn't have those little wings. So it has to be equal, just like when we divided it here. There's nothing extra. It's exactly the same on both sides. When we divide it here, this is not exactly the same. This is definitely smaller than the bottom portion. So I want you to explain how you know. Okay, perfect. I'm going to keep moving on, so if you have to go back and explain after, you can, but I don't want the video to be too long. Then I think we need to do math boxes on page 166. And the first question is it a triangle? Explain why or why not. The second one is a clock. The third one is digits or place value. The fourth one, you're using the parts total diagram to write a fact family. And then the last question is asking you how 7 plus 7 can help you solve 8 plus 6. So that's how did you use a double to help you solve 8 plus 6? Okay, so when you're done with that, or when you're done with both of those, post it to Seesaw. I can't wait to see your work. Have a wonderful day.